Well, hello everyone. It's lovely to be here. Let's put my computer somewhere where you can see me better. I have gremlins in the works and I'm really sorry if you were hoping to watch this live because it's just not happening. Thank you very much for coming. As you can tell, this is my first webinar on breathwork, but it won't be the last. I'm planning to do a whole series of them once a month. So I hope you can join me for the next one live. And I also seem to have not quite got into the swing of using my mail program. So I had a look today and only half the emails went out. And some of them appear to have gone on the wrong day. So this has been a bit jumbled, but let's go on with this recording and then we can get to grips with the live stuff later. You will be able to watch the replay on YouTube and I will be emailing you the address to watch that. So what I'm going to cover today, this is an introduction for those of you who have not tried rebirthing at all before, the breathwork before. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be telling you how I got into breathwork, what it was that I learned while I was doing it, what I found it useful for. So that's my story I'm going to be telling you. Then I'm going to be explaining to you how breathwork works, the different parts to it. It has some quite discrete phases that are good to understand. And then at the end of that, I shall be making you an offer if you wish to work with me. And that will be an offer to be working on my beta program, which is a new program I'm developing at the moment. That is going to be 3 months long. And it is mainly about breathwork, but it also covers the other modalities that I use, but particularly the nutrition and health areas. But I also have quite a lot of experience in things like voice dialogue and other ways of helping yourself to change into the person that you wish to be and to make your life really much more satisfying. Then there will be the next webinar, which I'll give you details of. And then I was hoping to do a load of question and answers at the end. But of course, that's not going to happen if I'm not able to communicate with you, which I'm really sorry about, because for me, that's the real, the nub of doing a live webinar. That was a lot of the point in doing it. So if you would like to have your questions answered, I will be making another opportunity to do that next month, and I hope you can join me then. So at the end, I shall give you the details of the next one. So let me introduce to you who I am, in case you don't know about me, and what it is that Rebirthing Breathwork has done for me, why it's been important, and it's been important for a long time in my life. I first came across it in the 1980s. I was looking for something that would help me to get really, I was going to say back on track, which is a phrase my friend uses, but that's not what I mean. I mean, I was looking for something that would bring me to a new path, to a place where I was comfortable with myself, where I was satisfied and optimistic, and spending time with the people in my life who really lit me up, who excited me with the interaction, and who had a lot to offer me as well as me to offer them, which is the best and most satisfying way of dealing with relationships. So that was why I went along to Rebirthing. I was looking for techniques for a while, several years, and the main problem that I had at that time was I had problems in my relationship, and I knew I was going to have to confront the fact that I was going to have to leave the relationship. And I was really afraid of living alone. So that was my main reason for going. I had 3 young children at the time, and I wanted something that would help me to be what I considered an independent adult. That's the subtitle of my book, Rebirthing Breathwork. If you're interested in that, it's on Amazon and as well as in other places, on Kindle. So creating an independent adult was what I was setting out to do in myself. And I did the training. It took me a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. It was profound, it was eye-opening, it was leading me on, leading me out in a way that I found very satisfying and still find satisfying. I still really enjoy working with people to help them to do the same thing. And during that time, I managed to change the fact that I was asthmatic. That wasn't one of the reasons that I went. It was a wonderful side effect, a byproduct of the breath work that I did with my breath worker, who was called Tony. And she and her husband Lee ran the training that I went on, which was wonderful, it was remarkable, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, fast forward to a number of years later, when I did learn to be independent. I did enjoy it, found that bringing up my children on my own was really satisfying. It was hard work, but it was really enjoyable. And I wasn't afraid of living on my own. So that huge thing that I wanted to confront and overcome, I did. So then, 15 years ago now, I was hit by a car. And I'd been practicing breathwork for at least 15 years at that point. And I had a horrible accident. I was hit in the leg by a car, and I was bleeding very quickly. I was dying in the road. I had a near-death experience. I had a time when I was given a choice as to whether I could carry on away from the pain and away from the life that I was used to leading, or that I could come back and see my children grow up. And in doing so, I knew that I was going to have to confront the pain. It was really horrible. And I really wanted to see my children. So I came back, and I had extraordinary experiences, apart from surviving at a time when my blood was leaking out so quickly that I lost half of it. And I don't know if it stopped because the automatic system in your arteries closes if your blood pressure drops very dramatically, or whether it was because the ambulance men arrived and put a tourniquet on my leg, which they did. And I remember thinking, I didn't think they used those anymore. But they do. If you're just about to die, it's a life-saving thing. So I was taken to hospital, and I had a number of operations. I had an external fixator in my leg. I was bedridden for 11 weeks. I was on crutches for a long time, and I had this fixator screwed into my leg for nearly 6 months. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because I truly believe, after the fact, I looked back and I read my books when I was learning to treat injuries, which is what I did later. And I understood that if you lost more than 15% of your blood, that you would die. And I lost 50% of my blood. And so I started looking at what could the contributing factors have been to my survival. And apparently the breathwork is the chief one, along with drinking water. I drink almost exclusively water. It's my choice. I like it. I also drink other things occasionally, but not every day. And I have a half raw diet, or at least then I did. Nowadays it's more than that, but I really consider that was another contributory factor. And I was vegan. I was a whole food vegan person and had been for at least a decade at that point. So looking at my story of being challenged physically, I was challenged emotionally, I was challenged psychologically, and I survived and I thrived, and I really came back able to live well. The operations I had worked well. The guys doing the operations were wonderful, but they were really worried that it wouldn't heal because it was such a big injury. And I'd already decided that it was going to. It was my decision. So I was confident that I would survive, that I would come back, that I would do what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know how long it would take. It took me a long, long time to learn to walk, about 10 years, because I wasn't able to put my heel down. And that was a nasty surprise, long-term surprise. Now I'm able to walk, and I can walk barefoot, which is really, really lovely for me. So there you are. That's a little bit about my story, because the near-death experience is actually quite central to the person I now am, because I've seen through the veil, because I've seen the other side, and because I really, really understand that this physical life is just one layer of many. My impression of life when I had left my body, it was briefly, but I had, my impression was that everything carried on as normal. All of the things that we understand and expect and imagine are still there when we have no physical body. It was not the end of anything. And that was a really valuable lesson for me. So, so I'm bringing you that as an introduction to who I am as a person, why I'm doing the work I do, and what it has brought to me, what benefit I've had from the experience that I've had with breathwork, which I still use all the time, by the way. So that's the little introduction that I was going to do, and I hope that's given you a flavour of who I am and why I do what I do. Now, the next thing that I wanted to do was to cover Rebirthing Breathwork itself and how it works and what might have brought you to it, why you might be interested in it, and what it can do for people, what it does do for people, why they find it so rewarding. Its proper name is Conscious Connected Breathing, and that's what you do. You connect your breath. I've forgotten to turn off interrupting noises, do apologise. So it's conscious connected breathing, which means that you breathe in and you breathe out, and you breathe in and you breathe out. And you may not think that that's news, because we are unaware of the fact that about 50% of the time we are neither breathing in nor breathing out. And within the Western world, we are normally holding our breath on the in-breath for a while each time. And this may be for several reasons, but we believe the main reason is because as a stress response, what we do is we hold our breath on the in-breath, which is not a relaxed place to be. Pausing on the out-breath is a more relaxed place to be, but even so, if we are halting in our flow, we are denying our body the intake of oxygen, which is obvious. But more importantly, we're denying our body the outflow of carbon dioxide, which is more important. 70% of the body's waste products pass out on the out-breath. That's a huge amount. So with excretion, when you go to the loo, there are about 30%. Urine is very important because it's the kidneys processing of toxins in the body, break down products of protein, for example. But actually in the breath, it's 70%. So small part in the sweat, some part in elimination, but this huge amount in our breath. So if we wish to change our health, that's really the most important place to start. Some of the people I know within the breathwork world are at the moment taking this to the World Health Organization as part of a real move to improve people's health in the general sense, because it has impacts on all sorts of areas of health. Huge ones, not just the breath breathing ones, which are obvious, but obviously anything to do with your blood and your blood supply, anything to do with oxygen intake, turnover, all of those things that we need. And it appears from my research that that is all of the systemic illnesses. They are all influenced by how much oxygen is available to particular areas, particular cells in the body. And that means that, for example, with something like diabetes, or you think of something really systemic, where you wouldn't imagine that the oxygen was the most important thing, it turns out that it really, really is central. So some work has now been done on breathwork and cancer, and it's been shown that there is a huge impact. I can't remember the figures now, I'll have to look it up, but there has been some work done now in lots of areas, mostly Russian research, I think. And this is showing something which is obvious to me, because I know that the growth of cancer cells is dictated by how much oxygen is available. So that's a relatively straightforward step to how it is that we can influence our body to maintain health and to keep producing cells in the normal way using oxygen because it's available. Whereas if you become ill, and if you start to grow abnormal cells, it's because not enough oxygen is available. And there are many ways to change that. Breathwork is one, exercise is another, and making sure that each part of your body is clear. So when I worked in physical injuries, clearing out any damaged cells from a bruised area, for example, means that the oxygenated blood can flow through. And that's the case, it appears, with all the illnesses that I've had a look at. So this is another reason why focusing on your breath and building up your breath really has this influence on your general health. So back to why we stop breathing properly. And this is where I'm brought to the moment of birth. We call it rebirthing because it appears that about 80% of people who go through this process have a memory of some sort of their birth. I had many rebirthing experiences that involved some part of my birth memory. The first ones I had were of being really constricted. And if you have that sort of feeling, and I used to have as a child actually as well when I was going to sleep sometimes, but that sort of frozen feeling or turning to stone feeling is about a birth memory. If you think about it from the baby's point of view, that's where we are, and it's our whole universe. As a sentient and conscious being, we can't see because our eyes are shut. We can't really smell or do any of the other things. We can't hear very well because our ears are covered. So our feeling in that place of the real extreme situation of being born, it's really fundamental that as we come out, if we've been born normally, if we've been born vaginally, our lungs have been squeezed so that the liquid that's in there preparing for breathing is expelled, comes out naturally through our, I think through our mouth it must come, yeah, the air passages it must come. So that's expelled, and so when we come out, we're ready to breathe. Now, at this point, the placenta is still attached and the cord is still pulsating. So the mother is providing the baby with oxygen. And that's wonderful because it means that the baby has a transfer and an overlap period of safety and comfort and security, knowing that their oxygen supply is guaranteed while they're learning to take it in a new way. So the first breath the baby makes is meant to be tentative. It's meant to be, okay, really gentle, really delicate. And traditionally, we have this idea that babies' first cry is a wonderful sound. Now, my conjecture is that as the baby learns to breathe for the first time, in our culture, in Western culture, the cord is cut. So the baby has no opportunity to practice. It is essentially being suffocated by the fact that its oxygen has just been cut off. And so it breathes in a state of panic. First breath is, and I think that's the first cry that we hear. That very first breath is going in. And the baby is afraid and it has all its startle reflexes and its panic going on. Usually it's being held by somebody it doesn't know. Usually it's being held away from someone. And if you think of the more gentle approaches to birth which have come in, the baby will be born and held right up on the mother's body straight away, or even come in water and she will hold it herself. And so the cord is still pumping the blood to the baby. The placenta is still operating. And this, I think, is meant to take about a quarter of an hour. And then if you put the baby to the breast, if the baby is breathing and it's feeding, the system, the oxytocin from the breastfeeding will close the womb, the placenta will come away, and then the system is complete and everything is working. And of course, by then the baby is already breathing. The baby is also being held by its mother, and it is knowing, because of her breathing, because of her heartbeat, that it's in a safe and familiar place. That's how it's meant to be. So since most of us weren't born like that, still today, sadly, most of us aren't born like that, but I'm talking to you now as the adult who's considering their progress with their breathing. We have learned to breathe in that state of extremis. That's how I was treated when I was born, and probably you were too. So what we have to do is to teach ourselves that it's safe to breathe. We have to access and accept the feelings that we had at the time we were born, because they have influenced the way that we continue to breathe. So every time we come across something new, we hold our breath. Every time we are reminded of any part of that circumstance, we hold our breath. So this, I hope, explains a little of why it is that we had the problems starting to breathe properly in the first place. And now I'm just working out what's logical to move on to next. Yes, what I move on to next within this is that this experience at our birth sets the tone for normal. It sets the tone for what we're going to expect later. You may have heard of Michel Audin, the French obstetrician, who started off as a surgeon who did lots of cesarean operations. And he wondered why it was that modern French women couldn't give birth normally. And so he began to explore what the precipitating factors were. And he made some observations, and one of them was that the length of the labour is directly in proportional to the number of people in the room. So I don't know if I got that right, but anyway, what he was saying was the more people there are in the room, the longer the labour would go on. So if you only have a few people present, and this is the way that mammals do tend to give birth, is that they go to a private place, you are much more likely to have a straightforward delivery. The more people there are in the mix, the more threatened you feel. You don't go out to a party when you're about to give birth. And so that having to adjust to a new circumstance is anathema to the continuation of a normal labour, particularly with people you never met before, which is a very peculiar thing to do. It's a strange civilised idea. So in our mammalian biology in giving birth, that's not the place where we feel safest, and it's not the most normal thing. So he observed all of this, and he also observed the fact that the fact that it sets the normal tone for our life means that we then react in a similar way as we move through life. And he felt that our emotional barometer was set at that time. So if we were set very, very hyper at our birth, that would be our normal, and we would continue to seek out what was our normal. So we would continue to seek out the high energy, nervous, fearful places in life, which is quite interesting now that I've looked at it and thought, well, that really makes sense, because those people who had that high intervention, fearful time tend to choose relationships that run like that, and family life that runs like that, and a job that runs like that. So that's really interesting. And it also shows why, when we've been doing breath work, we have a tendency to shift that. So not only do we shift the particular subject that we went for, the particular topic we went for, but it has a whole load of ripple and knock-on effects into the other areas of our life. We find that our friendships change. We find that our relationships change. We find we're not prepared to live under the same circumstances anymore or the same job anymore. That's really commonplace in people who've done breath work and other personal growth work. They start asking questions about, is this who I really want to be? Is this where I really want to be? And that's all very healthy in turning ourselves into the person that we wish to be and we wish to turn into. It might be quite good now for me to talk to you about some of the case histories that I've had, and I'm going to generalise them because I don't want to be identifiable. But I have had cases of a particular incident that somebody's finding is haunting them. So this is often called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's commonly linked with warfare experiences, especially currently with the experiences that our service personnel are having. But it's not just limited to that. It also comes with near-drowning experiences, near-death experiences. It also comes with situations in families where children have been under constant fear and constant pressure for various reasons, whatever they may be. Just have a drink. And because the result of these effects is that people are unable to really be in the present, to live, to be in the room they're in, with the view they're looking at, with the surroundings that are currently happening. And it means that they are unable to sleep properly, means that they're unable to heal properly, because all of these things require us to be present and to be able to relax. They require us to be able to switch off the, I'm trying to remember what one of my clients called it. He had a lovely name for it. This sort of being on guard all the time. And what I sometimes call the night watchman, because there is a part of us that's watching out for us all the time. And unless we're able to go into relaxation, rest, recuperation mode, we get ill. We get constantly ill, we're constantly tired, because those things require us to be able to let go of the stress and the adrenaline and to turn into what's the parasympathetic mode and to be able to refresh, regroup, recreate. So that's one type of person who comes to me who has some incident. Sometimes it's a one-off, sometimes it's long-term, but it's had that impact on them. And it's relatively straightforward to work with people who have a particular thing they wish to work through, and they're then able to leave it in their past and to open up to their current life and to be there in their current life, which is wonderful. It's really, really lovely to see. There are those people who wish to change their life in some way, so maybe gather the courage, like I did. I needed to gather the courage to welcome living on my own. So people like that are coming because they wish to leave a job they've been in for a long time that's stale, or move to another country, or something that is a big step for them. So it's not something that's impossible because they've seen other people do it, but it sort of feels impossible for them. And working with the breath, we can identify and isolate those parts of them that are reluctant or are frightened and see what the links are so that they can let those go. And so maybe what's good for me now is to introduce to you what a rebirthing session is like and how it works for you, what it does. So my job as the rebirther, apart from teaching you about the connected breath and ensuring that you do it, is to encourage you to be aware of any feeling in your body as you're connecting your breath, and carrying you through what you become aware of. It may be thoughts, it may be feelings, it may be tension, and staying with that. And my job is to keep you current and to maintain my connection with you so that you are not alone. Because the reason we had a problem with it at our birth is because we were not properly being accompanied to be able to deal with those things alone. And that's what really tips the SU. That's what really causes it to be something that we can't deal with ourselves. So my job, I sometimes call it being a midwife. My job is to be present while you revisit those things with yourself present, with your feelings present, breathing with those feelings, breathing them out, allowing the emotions to circulate instead of holding them. Because the way that we hold emotions in, because they are expressed in the breath, is by holding our chest in. So to hold your breath, you have to hold your chest. Try it. So if we hold our chest, we hold our emotions in, we are then not expressing ourselves properly, in depth, in intimacy, and that's why it has such knock-on effects in the rest of our lives. So what I'd like to do now is a little exercise with you. If you would just for a moment be with me, what I'll do is tell you the 20 breaths exercise, because it's short, it's straightforward, and it's a really good demonstration of what you get. It's only a demonstration of the breath itself, but it gives you a biological demonstration of how keeping your breath flowing affects you. So it's, let's get this right, 4 repeats of 5 breaths that make the 20 breaths. And you start with 4 short breaths, and then you take 1 long breath. So breathe with me. So that was the 20 breaths exercise. How do you feel? I feel a little bit lightheaded. I can feel a little bit of the same dizziness across here, actually. And I'm aware that I've been deliberately connecting my breath throughout this broadcast, because obviously when it began, I was hoping it was going to be live. And because I connect my breath and because I manage myself as I go along, I was able to think, what am I going to do about this? People are expecting to hear me now, and they can't. What shall I do? Okay, I'll record it live now, and then at the time they were expecting it to end, I can send out the information saying, here at least is a run through of what I was going to say to you. I'm really sorry I haven't got the live question and answer session, because that's the real enrichment. Please come back again next month. I will practice in between and make sure that I get it right. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. Obviously not to the question and answer session, but I'm going to move on now to tell you that when the next webinar will be. It's going to be on Monday, May the 18th at 7 o'clock UK time, 7 o'clock in the evening UK time, which will be 2 o'clock Eastern if you're in the United States, but unfortunately it will be a silly time, like about 5 o'clock in the morning in Sydney, if you were planning to join from Australia, for which I apologise. What I'm going to do is to make the one after that at a sensible time for people in Australia. So probably I'm going to select 3 times a day and rotate those, so that if you wish to listen again or come along live and do question and answer, or email me your questions and then I can answer them live, please do so, because I'm hoping to be inclusive, and I'm aware that I have followers from all over the world. So I'd like to be as inclusive as I possibly can be. And now, just for this webinar, what I'm going to do now is to move on to the offer that I'm making to those of you who are listening to this session, which is the beginning of my beta program. And what I will do is end the video here for people who are after the offer that I'm going to make now, because it will no longer be relevant. But for you, for the first 10 of you who wish to work with me, I would love to offer you the beta program as a really a special thing to be doing. It's really exciting to be starting this program. And for an exchange for the offer I'm going to make you, I'm going to ask you if you would supply me with feedback on the program itself and a testimonial. So let me tell you about the program so that you understand. The 3-month program is essentially a breathwork program, although when I'm teaching that, I will be teaching the other modalities that I believe help me to survive, and I also believe and practice in my everyday life that make me really, really super healthy, which I love. Why not, if you know how to, eh? So it will be covering the raw food, it will be covering the psychological understandings and the development of our spiritual connection, and the community support that we need, our direct line to the divine, to the source, all of those things that I practice in my everyday life that I would love to share with you. But the reason that I'm doing a 3-month program is because it takes about that length of time to get really familiar and confident in breathwork and doing it on your own, because it's a technique that you learn like driving lessons, and then you practice on your own. You can come back for a session in the future if you wish to, but you are essentially being trained to do it alone. So there will be what we call a VIP day, where the first session that you and I do together will be a Skype VIP session, which will be about 4 hours. It may be broken into 2 parts so that you can have lunch depending on the time of day. It's a really, really in-depth, detailed session so that you can go into everything that you would love to change, that you would hope for, that you dream of in your life. And before you do that day, you have a detailed questionnaire to really help you to focus on what you want to change and me to understand what that is. We also have an hour-long phone call before that so that you can talk through anything you would like to with me. I call it a direction call, so that you can work out where you're planning to go. So you have the 4-hour VIP session online, and then in the following 11 weeks after that, you will have 1 Skype session a week with me. Now, they will be mostly breath sessions. They will probably be a little over an hour so that we can cover what we need to, and at a time to suit you and I. And in those sessions, we will be practicing the breath work. You will be learning how to do it on your own. You will be processing all the things that you need to be able to do that. And obviously you're able to ask me questions that you need to. I will supply you with any of the publications that I've written that will support you with that. So the Rebirthing Breathwork, or whatever you need to help you through that. And access to my videos and articles that I've written. There's quite a lot of background information that's really helpful. And some of the things that I find really inspirational. Abraham Hicks is one of those at the moment, is one I'm working with very closely at the moment. And I hope things like the raw food, increasing the raw food in your diet and understanding the part that, for example, green leaves play will be relevant to you and something you would like to practice, as well as how to make the best, yummiest raw desserts. That's changed my life. And and cleansing your body and really helping yourself to be well. It's wonderful. So that's what you get on the 3-month program, as well as the access to email me if you need to ask me questions, and really focused time, because I'm only going to be taking on 4 people at a time, which means that I will be really available to you through your process. And it means that within 12 weeks, you can have turned your life around. You will really see changes in your day-to-day life, in your health. You will see the changes in your work life, in your personal life, in your relationships, and with your family. That's something that really changes profoundly and remarkably and delightfully. So that's what you will get if you join my program. Now, the full price for that program is £1,499 for the 3 months. And today, if you are one of the first 10 to sign up, you will be able to do it for £749. And if I translate that for you into dollars, it's $1,120. And if I translate it into euros, it's 1,025 euros, just so that you don't have to do all the calculating. And I would be really, really delighted to talk to you about this. So what would be lovely is if you would email me, if that's your preference, at catherine@catherineholland.co.uk, and we will arrange a discussion so that you can come on board with the program and change your life in the way that you would love to. So thank you so much for listening, and apologies it's not live. I really hope that you will come on live next time in May.